I'm going to call the meeting to order, please. And I should like a motion, please, to adopt the agenda for the March 14th special meeting of council. Blanchette and Torgerson. Are there any additions? Yes, Councillor.
Just from memory, last council meeting, were we going to institute a committee, select committee for heat opportunities?
Not at this time.
Okay.
This is strictly for
Strictly budget.
Budget, yes. Okay. All in favor? Carried. We now are asking the Director of Finance to bring forward the 5-year financial plan, the draft 2016 Village of Valemount annual budget and 5-year financial plan. Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Floor is yours.
So this is very preliminary. We're going over some of the major expenses that staff has considered and that we need to implement into the budget. I'm going to be providing what they are and how they're going to be covered. After this, I will be writing a report at the next council meeting to approve them or to not approve them, and what the budget tax increase would be implemented for. So first, I've listed the council's strategic priorities, and what we try and do for every budget item is to have one of these associated with it. So we're continuing to go with how council wants to proceed. So I've just listed them all here. So the 3 categories that the village has is the general, water, and sewer. The general is it's the bigger budget item. So I'm going to start with that one first. It includes mostly roads, streets, administration, of course, council expenses. One of the bigger items that we're going to be discussing that has been approved is the salary item. I know it's always a hot topic for some people. For the salaries, this year, last year we had a salary review. Our CAO did one, and there was a report stating over a 5-year period increases for the salaries for senior staff and other positions. We have a new position of a grant clerk. We've also had 2 additional staff days to assist the corporate officer, economic developer, and the DOF while the CIO was not present during January, February, March. We've also had a small compensation to senior staff while the CIO was gone. Just to give you an example, I personally have put in over 110 hours for overtime since January to now, so we're all working extra for that. And also to have the CIO recruitment. Some of the things I wanted to point out, one of the things I always hear is that there's so much staff. Why do we pay for so much staff? Back in the day. So here I've showed some of the things that Public Works now does that they never did prior to I came. This is just since I've been here 6 years ago, additional work for them. So we have the downtown revite, which is a lot of maintenance and cleaning for that. We now do the garbage collection, which was previously contracted to a person in Valemount. The boundary expansion, so now it's more roads, garbage collection, sewer and water, mowing of the ditches. The Bigfoot Trail takes a lot of maintenance. The water treatment facility we never had before, so that takes a lot of the Public Works time, certification. Also the sewer treatment had upgrades. Work-safe laws have come into effect where you can't even have one person on the site at all times. It has to be 2 people, so that includes more staffing. We have had a tree program quite a few years where Trevor had mentioned that he has over 1,300 flowers and 600 trees that have to be maintained every summer. So it's clipping, pruning, watering. And also we have an increased fire hydrant maintenance program that they're working on. Office staff, we have procurement policies, and I remember that our economic developer and senior staff had a presentation to council about all of the paperwork that's included in this procurement policy and how much time it contains. So that's a huge thing for us in all departments. The PSAV 3150 is in regards to our assets. We never had to track them before. We now have a detailed spreadsheet. We're actually working on a grant that looks at what the maintenance has to be over the long term so we can budget that properly. And also carbon emissions that we have to track and report to the ministry on a regular basis. So those are just some of the things that we do. Also the grant administration. I looked at some of the grants. At any time we have 30 to 50 grants that we're looking at and maintaining. And that is why we hired the grant clerk. It just couldn't be done with the staff we had. Extra staffing I talked about, the 2 extra days. And some of the larger projects that we're working on is the VGDR and geothermal, which is taking a lot of our staff time. So overall, the total of all of those combined was $67,900. The NDIT intern grant, we did not qualify this year because we didn't have a CIO at the beginning of the year. So that $15,000 we are contributing to this wage. We also have $12,000 admin from CBT, the CIP program, which we usually just put into surplus. We're now going to put that towards the wages as well. So overall, 41 will come from the village. Professional services. We had extra expenses for recruiting a permanent CIO, and then we also have conducting a 3-month evaluation that was talked about. The total for that is $7,000. In here, I've listed priorities and alternatives, and so council can have the alternative to actually waive the 3-month evaluation from Ken Weisner, which will save some money if so wishes. And I'll have all of these recommendations and alternatives in the next report to council for you. The Visitor Information Center, we're requesting new chairs up there. If anyone's had a meeting up there recently, you know how uncomfortable it is. And we're having a lot more meetings up there for village staff and for the visitors that go up there for interpretive talks. Total for that was $3,000. The village entrance sign flags, when we first did this entrance sign, it was conceived with the 3 flagpoles on the south side of the structure. It's never been done. The cost is $3,000 to get that done and to incorporate it. Of course, alternative is to budget in 2017 or just not do it. The Swift Creek Bridge, this isn't actually Swift Creek Bridge, but in 2014, Ministry of Highways notified the village that the Swift Creek Bridge right by the seniors complex actually belongs to the village. There's a lot of digging, and we brought up some papers from 1980 something. So we've now inherited this. Now that we know it's ours, I've had to incorporate it into our insurance policy. The insurance is $5,000 a year for that. Our insurance company that we currently have is going to come up and assess it and see if it needs to be reduced or not. The maintenance on it, we were given a study on it and what has to be done, and that was the estimate for the maintenance on it. Of course, we can move that to 2017. It's in good condition right now as it is. And of course, we'll have that reassessed for the insurance. Our office phone system, it's become obsolete, so we cannot order extra phones for the system. We have 2 offices that share 2 staff in there, so they only have 1 phone, so they're sharing. We also have a phone that's almost on the brink of not working. We have a grant clerk at the front who could use one to help with the administration at the front desk. Unfortunately, these systems are extremely expensive. Yeah. So $15,000. So I have alternatives to budget in 2017, or to begin budgeting $5,000 a year over the next few years so that we can purchase one in a few years. Shop security. After the break-in at the Public Works Yard, we realized that we needed some additional security. So Trevor had our current security company come down, give us a quote for this. $3,500 would be the total cost for lighting and monitoring, and that's just at the Public Works Yard. I've also incorporated this expense into water and sewer because those 2 places need to be upped in that security. Also, budget in 2017 is always an alternative for some of these that haven't already been approved. Shop theft replacements. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Mrs. McNee. Was that just for the Public Works Yard security, or?
Just the Public Works,
Okay.
and I've budgeted again in the water and sewer coming down.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Sylvia. The shop theft replacements, unfortunately, because everything that was stolen is so minimal in value, it wasn't insured, so we kind of have to bite that cost. And Trevor has already purchased 1 saw, and he has to purchase a few other things, so it'll be a $3,000 expense just to replace some of those. Line painting, this is usually done every few years, and it's been put off and put off. So this year, Trevor would like to get everything from the Public Works Department done, so it's a cost of $10,000. This would include Main Street, 5th Avenue, Caris Drive, crosswalks, and I think it might include some of the Bigfoot Trail. Road repairs, we have a major for the pavement at Carrish Drive, there's a lot of breakage in there from the semis turning in there. So that's one area that Trevor really wants to focus on. There's also a few more around town that he'd like to repair. The total for that, he had a budget of $7,500 and had that quoted. Of course, moved to 2017. Garbage bin replacements, we're realizing that we were short on the 35s. Everybody has switched over. Also, some have just been wearing and tearing that have been breaking, so we're budgeting to purchase some more.
Councillor Blanchette.
Is there any kind of warranty on those cans? Because we haven't had them very long.
We've had them for 3 years. So there isn't warranty, but this fee here of what it's covering, we cover that through the garbage user fees. So it's not an additional tax. We're actually covering this expense. Yeah. Garbage truck maintenance. When we first purchased the garbage truck, we used the old couplers from the old one and put it on this one. So Public Works has been making it together and it's now time to replace it. This is a $3,100 cost. Again, we were able to cover this cost through the garbage user fees. Garbage truck, oh sorry, that should be grader maintenance. Front tires for the grader is required. I put on here, once the UBCM tangible capital asset study comes back, we'll budget for these items on a continuous basis and have it spread evenly over the budget. I'm hoping a 20-year budget soon. For now, it's every 4 years, 5 years, it's a major hit. So soon we'll budget it evenly. These are also expensive, $6,000. The boundary expansion referendum, if we do require this with VGD, we will be required to do this, and it's $10,000, and this is based on previous election costs. OCP and zoning bylaw, we had this in last year's budget, and it is a priority for council. Some of this was from last year, so if we didn't use it, it goes into the surplus, so we're just going to pull this out of the surplus again and use it. So it's just an expense from last year. We also have a land use planning grant that can subsidize some of this cost. Traffic study, again, we had this last year, but didn't get to it. So again, it will come from the surplus that just went into there. Geothermal workshop, it was already held in February. I didn't have too much more to add to that one at the last minute. This one, Village had issued $7,500 and was approved to be put into this year's budget. Everything else was covered by grants for this workshop. The dog pound was not completed in 2015 due to weather, so there's just a little bit remaining. It'll come out of the surplus again to cover that. New additional cemetery sites. Of course, you know our cemetery is getting full. We've had a scan which allowed for approximately 50 new sites, but that is only going to give us a few years, 3-4 years. So we're still continuing to put money in to the cemetery fund so that we have enough to create one in a few years. Some of our grants that we have, of course, the UBCM Tangible Capital Asset Grant that we're doing, it's from 2015, it's been pulled forward. And of course the village, and this will come from the surplus as well because it's a 2015 being carried forward. And then half covered by UBCM. So general was quick. Does anyone have any questions?
Go ahead, Mr. Yeah.
Ms. McNee, just on the subject of the phones that you had raised, I thought it might be valuable just to point out to council that in the event of an emergency, we rely on the phone system, and that this facility here is actually the designated emergency center.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I have an asterisk beside the phone system as well, so there's no questions about this, about any of this at this time, but there will be some discussion later. Yes.
For the water, we have the Water Smart Ambassador Program, which we do every year. And of course, that's a $5,000 cost to the village, and $10,000 is a grant from CBT. A gen set for the water intake pumps. This is a big item that it's a wish list item, I think, right now. Trevor Pelche has received a study from Ministry of Northern Health, They've written a report identifying some upgrades to consider. One of them is to have a gen set at the water intake. That way, in case of emergencies, we always have emergency water. This one is a $75,000 cost. Right now, I have it coming from reserve that we could take from, but we will look for grants to offset that somehow. Fire hydrants, again, we're doing a major fire hydrants maintenance program. Public Works would like to have an additional fire hydrant every year to start replacing some of them. So we're budgeting these every couple years, or one per year. And they're approximately $4,000 for that.
Each?
Yeah. Swift Creek review. Every few years, the Public Works Superintendent and perhaps the CAO take a helicopter and fly Swift Creek. They make sure there's no debris, no blockage. They look to see if there's going to be potential flooding. So that should be done this year. And that's approximately $1,500 for that flight.
Is there a chance that we could partner with MOTI for a LiDAR study to really significantly survey that watershed?
I will definitely look into that. Water treatment plant chemicals. Our Public Works Department just recently put in a quote for some of our chemicals, and some of them have almost doubled since last year. So it's going to be a significant increase. There's also a filtration system that requires upgrades that hasn't been done yet. So that's another major increase for that.
And that's how much?
$5,000
Okay.
for the filtration.
Okay.
Oh, and those numbers are wrong, sorry. This up here will have to be changed to 13. Any questions for the water?
Not at this time. We'll probably discuss.
Okay, Fifth Avenue lift station. We had budgeted this last year, and we just got started on it this year, and we're working with Urban Systems on this. Provincial and federal funding is $470,000. Village surplus, we're going to have to use $235,000. Total $735,000.
Okay.
And I can also provide you all of this PowerPoint presentation as well.
Thank you.
This $235,000, I'm going to try and look to see if we can use our gas tax funding for it. Hopefully we can, it can be offset a bit, because that will deplete our surplus quite a bit.
$235,000 is from the reserve?
Yes.
Okay.
Lift station pumps, we've realized that we don't have a lot of spares on hand. So if a lift station goes down, we're kind of in trouble, and we're there 24/7 pumping it to make sure it goes through. So Public Works would like to start getting one pump even per year, to start getting one additional one for the lift stations that we have. Each pump is approximately $7,000. Sewer line flushing. Previously, we did a major flush, and that's all of our sewer lines every 3 years, 2 to 3 years. Public Works is now started to do it every year. It's going to maintain our lines, it's going to prevent backing up, and the additional cost for this is $8,000 a year. The pumper truck, it was a new expense last year, and we didn't budget any expenses for the insurance and repairs, so that's an additional amount to the budget of $4,000 a year to cover that. Public Works salary, I talked about that earlier, some of the increases. But for the sewer, last year we had budgeted a certain amount and they went way over in sewer, but they were way under in general. They spent a lot of their time in the sewer instead. So this is an additional $17,000 in wages for the sewer. Overall, it will be offset by the general, by the taxes. This, however, does come from the user fees, the utility bills, and not the taxes. And that's it.
Okay, Council, do you have questions for Ms. Macneill? Councillor Blanchette?
So, let's just say that everything here on your list is given.
Yes.
Where does that leave our surplus?
The water and sewer are actually balanced out. There's nothing taken from surplus except for the major, like the lift station and the genset. It, however, does not give us any monies for amortization. So that's nothing being put into surplus for reserves for future. But water and sewer are zeroed out. If everything is approved in the general, and I'm still waiting for some final numbers from KPMG from our year end, taking out anything from that was moved from 2015 to 2016 is about $85,000 from surplus we're using. Currently, we have about $400,000 available in our surplus that isn't set aside for other items. And I'll document that in a report to council at the next meeting.
Thank you. Any more questions, Councillor Blanchette?
No.
Okay. Councillor Salt and Torgerson? Councillor Salt?
There were some previously budgeted things as well that I know haven't been completed. I'm just wondering where those are. I didn't notice them on
Do you
the
remember which items they are?
airport, crack ceiling, line painting.
The line
That's-
painting is on there. The airport, we still have $50,000. And I might have missed that on that one. I know at the last council meeting, I was provided with airport infrastructure granting. So we're looking at that to complete the airport. Yeah, so that would be carried from 2015 from the surplus.
Anything further, Councillor?
Nothing that I can think of right off the top right
Okay. Councillor Torgerson?
I constantly interrupted, so I have my questions answered.
You were interrupting.
Oh, we tolerate that. Don't worry about it. Thank
We
you.
were approved for the NDIT grant writer and through the community forest. The closing date, the job posting's been posted, closing date is March 31st. So once they're on board, they're gonna have a lot to do. They're looking for grants for everything for us.
That's good.
We also all budget high for expenses, low for revenues, just to be careful.
Yes. Okay. Yes, Councillor
sorry.
Blanchette, okay.
So when do we ask for the wish stuff that we want? You know, like if the library or the museum or something needs items, VCTV has something on the plate, like when do we get to ask for that stuff and know if it's gonna fit in or not?
This would be the time.
This would be the time? Okay,
Or you can have them at the next council meeting, and I
Okay.
can take that into consideration and redo it.
okay.
I know we're pushed for time in order to get the bylaw completed, so we may have to have a couple more special council meetings to get this passed in time.
Okay. My priority, and I believe that every municipality's priority should always be water and sewer. Public health takes priority over everything. That's not to say that roads and parks and cemeteries aren't important, but water and sewer comes first. And I'm just going to go back to general at this time with respect to several systems or several items that I have asterisked, and that is the 3-month evaluation. I don't know how council feels at this time, but I feel that with a proper template, we can do our own and save $2,500 there.
I believe we decided to take that off, didn't we?
No, we didn't decide that.
Okay.
It was
We
only
talked about
discussed.
it. Oh, okay,
Yeah, but it wasn't decided.
okay.
So I don't know how, Councillor,
I would agree.
you would agree?
I think we'll be able to do it ourselves.
Okay, Councillor Torgerson?
Agreed.
Okay, so there, we've saved $2,500. Okay? I do think that our phone system is essential, okay? I wonder if there's any grants for anything like that. But we can see. I know that you will look. But I agree with Mr. Young that that's absolutely essential, that we have a proper phone system for emergencies, because it is true that this is going to be the place
Yes.
that deals with it. And also security. I should also like to see that our security system is updated and upgraded.
Yes.
I mean, we had proof of that last year.
Exactly.
Okay. I think those are the only 3 things that I want to comment on, apart that I agree with everything that's required for water and sewer.
Okay.
Okay? Councillors, do you have anything further that you want to add? Yes, Councillor Salt.
When the assets were being, when you were having to compile the listing of all our assets for the tangible capital assets, was there any work done as far as the village buildings, as far as what we have for piping? It's like, do we have any lead pipes in any of our buildings? With what's happened in Flint down in the States, it's become something very important. And I mean, Northern Health sent a letter to the daycare. So I'm just wondering, is that anything that could be a potential budget item?
It could be. It's gonna be a matter if we do have to replace lines, where do we get the money from?
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons that we're looking at increasing the utility fees, unfortunately. But eventually, they're gonna have to be replaced. I can ask the Public Works Department and see exactly what they are.
Like, I'm pretty sure most of our in-ground lines have been being changed over as they need replacing, but I'm just wondering about some of the lines that
In
go
buildings.
to the buildings and within our buildings.
Especially some of them are quite old. Okay, I'll ask that and get back to you then, next council meeting.
Thanks.
Councillor Torgerson.
Check the age, because I think through the 60s, they were upgraded to copper from a building code standpoint.
Okay. I don't think any of our
my-
plants are that old.
But there is still the concern, sorry.
Okay.
There is still the concern, some of the actual valves and some of the solder that was even used still contained lead that could leach traces, so just something that we might have to look into.
I would imagine that this should be in the Public Works records, okay? Now, the municipality was, there was no water prior to 1964. And if, as Councillor Torgerson says, the building code already can request, or a requisite was for copper piping.
Well, I've only just been privy to a couple of housing designs and absolutely zero lead in those pipes.
Yes.
Now, whether this, not taking away from Councillor.
No, I know.
Salt, yes, lead-based solder was used back in the day. However, Public Works should have a better
I would
idea.
imagine that they would have all the records on file. Yes, yes.
I'll actually forward a copy of the letter from Northern Health to the village. They should have a copy of the letter.
That'd be great.
So then they know what Northern Health
for.
is looking at.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Anything further?
So just to confirm, I will take a summary of everything that we've done today. I will present it in a financial form, and I'll write out all the additions that will be included and the cost and where it'll come from. Hopefully, we'll have the surplus amounts from KPMG. They're actually scheduled to present the financials at the next council meeting, the drafts. So we'll have those numbers.
Mr. Macneill, do you have something you wish to?
Well, there's a few points of interest,
Okay.
and I am only on day 6 here, so the Swift Creek Bridge.
Yes.
In 2014, the province communicated with the municipality of Valemount, I understand, and whereby they maintained and discovered the bridge was the villages. Is that correct?
Yes.
The highway on either side, who does that belong to?
Regional district on the other side. And I actually contacted regional district to see if they would share in the cost of it. And unfortunately, regional district does not have anything to do with highways or bridges. So it's the Ministry of Highways, and I'm going to try and contact them in the near future too, to share the costs of it.
I'm just thinking of the legality. If it's the equivalent, is it a provincial highway?
No.
It's a regional highway then? You
would
you
be
said the
Whiskey
highway on
Hill
either
Pass.
side is the responsibility of the regional district? Is that correct?
The road portion, the bridge is in the village boundary.
Okay, so it's the road as well as the bridge is responsibility.
Yeah.
But the province had been looking after it for how long a duration?
They weren't.
They weren't? Oh,
No, what happened was they had a bridge maintenance worker. They just hired to look after the bridges, and he realized that was one of the bridges that wasn't on his list, and I believe he started to do some investigating, and it came to be known that it was actually ours.
so was the village always maintaining it, or is this a new expenditure?
It's a new expenditure because we didn't realize that we were supposed to be maintaining
So then
it.
who was previously maintaining, who historically was maintaining it?
I don't believe anyone was. I don't
So
have any records that the Ministry of Highways.
There was no
did it.
maintenance ever done to the bridge then? Okay, because if there was a history or a pattern, or if there's other owners on either side of the bridge, then there's like implied easements and you could have, you see, often I'm thinking if provincial governments have been known in the past and federal governments that through the levels, there's a passing of the expenditures down.
Yes.
We know that.
And I'm just wondering whether or not there was grounds to maintain that this was their expenditure previously and whether it was reviewed.
And that's what I'll be asking the Ministry of Highways when I call them, if they have previously done any maintenance on it.
At one time, what we call Main Street was highway. And so that would have been Provincial Ministry of Highways. But when did it become Main Street? Did it become Main Street when the village of Valemount was incorporated?
I will have to look at the documents, but I remember seeing something where it was actually the village of Valemount owned it and built it.
The village of Valemount built it?
bridge?
Or somebody built it and the village was paying for it. But I will look at those documents and I'll
Yes.
actually provide them at the next council meeting. Somewhere there's documents where it says Village of Valemount on
I just want to say
it.
that it's a good thing we have many residents who have been in Valemount for many years and were here when the village was incorporated. And so that used to be a connection to the highway.
Absolutely.
And when the village was incorporated, it became Main Street. And we'll have to talk to former councillor Nordley. She's the Valemount historian.
Yes.
she, I think, if anybody would know, she would. So,
As mentioned, I will bring those documents. I'll include them in my report to
okay,
council
that's
for
good.
that.
And I shall call her tomorrow and see if she has anything in her
record keeping.
her record keeping. She is absolutely amazing. She took some materials to the Columbia Basin Trust when former chair Gary Merkel retired, and she came as a guest to his retirement function. And the materials that she had regarding the Mica Dam and Kinbasket Reservoir, the senior staff person, when he saw what was in it, he said, "I'm not even taking this to my room. I'm putting it in the trunk of my car right now." He didn't want to lose it. So she has some very valuable scrapbooks and historical items that she might be able to find for us. Because, as I say, at one time, that was highway. Yeah. Okay, yes?
In the same vein of thought, or segueing into the second question, the traffic study you mentioned, and there was an allotment in the budget going to be assigned to that. What street or road is that study of traffic going to be assigned to?
It was for right beside A&W and the empty lot beside that coming off the highway.
Former SO.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that the road that's parallel to the highway?
Yes.
I call it a service road. What's the
Carris
road?
Drive.
Carris Drive.
Carris?
Carris Drive.
So it's for traffic on that drive, is it?
And I know Mr. Young would be able to have some more information on this. We've had quite a few people inquire about that empty lot.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that our traffic study allows that.
Now, the highway that goes down the middle has a Trans-Canada flag on it, right? Route 16. And they have from the center line a certain distance out in terms of their easement and their maintenance that's applied. I'm not in this line of business, but I'm wondering what's the width? Is it 66 feet or 100 or 30 feet from the center line? Because if you extend it out, have they encroached, or does it include that old road? Was it not once the primary road before they put in? How old is this
Carris
the
Drive
main
is not
highway?
the primary road.
No? Okay.
It's a frontage road.
But it's very close. It's parallel too.
Yeah.
And what's the distance? Is it more than 100 feet? Is it 200 feet?
I'd have to
So
ask
if you
that.
extend the boundary of the provincial, is that a provincial or a provincial federal joint?
The Yellowhead Highway is provincial.
All right, so if we look up and just confirm that, I'm probably grasping at something here that doesn't apply, but just what is the width of the boundary associated with that road, and what if the parallel roads beside are within that, then there's some shared responsibility and there's some financial sharing that you could argue. It'd be a long argument, it would take years, but you might be able to cultivate something there. Right?
Oh, I like the way you think.
I will ask them
Yes.
about the bridge then.
Councillor Torgerson.
To answer Mr. McNeil's question, it's 3 large steps off the white line that signifies the shoulder is the right of way, because that's where you can discharge a firearm.
And I know Public Works maintains all of the ditches.
Yeah, I'm thinking of involvements I've had in the past in other provinces from the center line. There's a right-of-way or there's a certain distance, and it can be 40 feet or 60 feet. It depends on the type of the highway. And the highway has the right, you have to, if you want to place signs or anything in there, you have to get their permission.
That's correct.
So to the shoulder is one thing, but I don't know what the proper term is, but the title or the ownership or the rights of their administration, what's the span of that?
Okay, we'll have to find that out, yeah. Councillor Salt.
So I'm just curious why the traffic study would be a cost of the village if in the past there's been other developers that have had to pay for traffic studies for developments they've considered. Why would it be on us to pay for it?
So the owner developer, the former SO site, has actually done some preliminary traffic analysis about what the potential impact of their proposal might be. The money, though, that Ms. McNeill is speaking of is related to other traffic impacts that are not necessarily associated with the development of the Essos site. As we well know, there's a significant amount of semi-truck trailer usage of that area. As well, there's also a need to evaluate what might be some of the other traffic movement impacts within that area as it develops. The intention of this budgeted amount was to ensure that there was money set aside over time so that we had a reserve amount available for the village so that we weren't being surprised all at once by this potentially quite costly study. It could range anywhere from $25,000 to $45,000 depending upon the extent of it. So that was that part. Then there were two other things that were also talked about by Ms. Macneill, which was related to the zoning bylaw update and official community plan update. So a bit more background on that. Our zoning bylaw, some updates to that, which I'm currently working on and I'm hoping to have completed and delivered to council before I leave. But those are what I would describe as interim updates. Your zoning bylaw, any municipality in British Columbia, the zoning bylaw is intended to be consistent with its official community plan. There's an absolute requirement for that. So at some point, our existing official community plan is now 10 or more years old, and it's never actually been reviewed in a detailed way. When that official community plan was developed, Valemount was a very vibrant, thriving, economically very stable and solid community. A lot of that was due to the mill, and the mill is now gone. So a lot of the economic premises around which that official community plan was developed no longer are valid. It would be a worthwhile exercise for the village to undertake an official community plan review at some point in the future. Those can be expensive, and so again, budgeting accordingly to set money aside into a reserve fund will help with that. And then that sets the stage as well for future updates to the village's zoning bylaw. You'll hear more about the zoning bylaw and the proposed changes to that next week.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you for clarifying that about the traffic
Yes,
study.
do you have another question over that?
Conceptualizing and being naughty and trying to see if there's a way that there isn't an onus on the provincial government. I'm just thinking a little bit outside the box, but it's not necessarily outside the box, if you don't mind. The highway comes through, and the gas stations are adjacent, for all intents and purposes, to the highway. They serve the traffic that's associated with the provincial highway.
Yes.
These roads run parallel just for a very short distance, akin, if you will, to an exit and access road that's associated with the highway.
Yes.
Do you follow me?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's probably creating a lot of work, and it might not take flight or have wings, but I believe that it's associated with the highway, and an argument can be made.
Okay.
And you may or not get anywhere with it, but if you did try, the purpose would be to get some sharing, cost sharing.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained?
Yeah.
Didn't we just talk about that about
Right.
an hour ago? Yes, I agree.
Agreed.
Okay, we'll try. We'll see what we can do. Okay. Do you have any further comments, Mr. Young?
Oh, no.
No?
But thank you.
Yes, okay. Council, any further? Ms. Macneill, do you have anything further that you want to add? Or anything following council's discussion?
Another special council meeting date. Or I can send a request and you guys can look at your schedules and then get back if you want.
And I'll just reiterate the same suggestion as last time, is please advise Ms. Macneill when you are not available. And then it'll be easier for her too.
There was one other comment.
You have one more comment?
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
The gen set, that was priced, it was $75,000?
Yes.
So, of course, when you have large equipment, I'm curious, you have the option of looking at leasing or purchasing. And there may be entities that would And then you do basically you do a cost analysis of which is more efficient, to pay the lump sum up front and purchase it, or to lease it and pay, in which then it becomes treated differently under the budget. Because lease payments, you may be able to you can capitalize them, but you may be able to expense as an operating expense a portion every year, perhaps. Nevertheless, it's about capital budgeting and management, because then you can spread it out over numerous years over the life of the generator, which is consistent with depreciation, rather than spending a lump sum and taking a big hit up front. And I'm just wondering whether there's more than one quote and whether leasing was looked at.
I'll ask the Public Works Department on that.
Okay.
So that might be a good thing to discuss with the Public Works Superintendent and Ms. Macneill.
Okay.
Yes?
Can I just ask, by what date do you want to have the other special budget meeting?
May I email everyone tomorrow? I just have to look at the dates to make sure that the bylaw is passed by a certain date.
And council meets next Tuesday night?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yes, just email us and we'll email you the time that we are not available. That way it'll be easier for you to establish a date. Okay? Anything further? Is council ready to move the recommendation? Oh, yes.
I think that under the circumstances, the recommendation that is in front of you is probably inappropriate at this time. We crafted this on the basis of last year's work.
Okay.
So staff's recommendation, I think, would be to receive the report
Yes.
that's been provided.
Okay. So I would like a motion, please, to receive the report, Torgerson and Salt. Any questions or discussion, comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. All right. Do we want to do the public comments when we have only media present? Oh, okay, public comments. Yes.
You have a comment, Gord Peters, 0410 8th Avenue. I was in my previous life in the hotel business, managed 4 hotels. We never purchased a phone system in any hotel. And the reason is they do become obsolete. So they're a good item to consider for leasing if possible. And we used to pay, well, they used to be 50,000 at that time, so they've come down quite a bit, but they're still leasable items.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anything further from the public? All right, I'll take a motion to receive the public comment. Okay, Blanchette and Salt. All in favor? Carried. All right, so we will now take a motion to adjourn. Does anybody have anything further before you adjourn? Okay.
Hands up.
Take your choice. It's what, 6:12, 6:13? Okay. And it's adjourned. Thank you.